I paid for the wedding. The food, the flowers, the chairs. But I watched it all from a quiet living room. Not one mention. Not even a thank you. So I picked up the phone. I started ironing my suit at 4 in the morning. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels thick like cotton in the air. Outside, the sky was still ink black. Inside, the soft hiss of the iron and the ticking of the grandfather clock filled the silence. My hands shook slightly as I pressed the rose-colored fabric, smoothing every wrinkle with care. I'd chosen the suit weeks ago. It wasn't new, but it was special. Satin collar, pearl buttons, a gentle shimmer to the sleeves. It felt like something a real lady would wear to a wedding. Today was the day. My granddaughter, my beautiful, brilliant Ellie, was getting married. I could still see her at age 5, running through my backyard with grass stains on her knees and popsicle juice dripping down her chin. She used to sit on my lap and braid my hair, telling me she'd never grow up and leave me. And now here she was, all grown up, walking down an aisle I wouldn't see unless I was on time. Which is why I'd woken up at 3:30, even before the alarm. I finished the suit and moved to my vanity. The air smelled faintly of lavender and starch. I brushed back my hair, curling it gently, setting each wave in place with silver pins that had belonged to my mother. Then I reached for the perfume bottle, L'air du Temps. I hadn't worn it in years. One spray behind each ear, one on the wrist. The scent took me back to the first time I wore it. My husband had leaned in and whispered, "You smell like spring." I smiled at the memory. I missed him most on days like this. Back in the kitchen, I set a kettle on to boil and laid out a single teacup, my best one, with delicate blue flowers and a gold rim. It had a tiny chip on the edge, but I turned it so no one would see. I sliced a lemon, added honey, chamomile, just enough to settle my nerves. It was 5:30 by then. I sat by the window, tea in hand, watching the light begin to stretch across the lawn. I'd been told a car would arrive at 8 to take me to the ceremony. It was part of the wedding plans. They'd hired a company to pick up the honored guests. I had laughed when I heard that term. Honored. Felt lovely. And a little bit like a fairy tale. I didn't want to be a burden. I had offered to drive myself, but my son insisted. "No way, Mom," he'd said. "We've got it covered. You relax." So I did. I even packed my handbag the night before. Tissue, mints, medication, an extra pair of nylons just in case. And tucked carefully inside, folded twice, was a short speech. Just a little toast I'd written in case they asked me to say a few words. Marriage, I'd written, isn't loud. It's quiet. It's warm socks on cold nights. It's washing the dishes together even when you're both tired. I practiced it in front of the mirror. I knew my voice wasn't as steady as it used to be, but it still carried meaning. And love. Plenty of love. The clock struck 6 o'clock. I stood again, checked the hallway mirror. My lipstick was soft plum, just like I wore on my own wedding day. I pinned my brooch, the one my mother gave me in 1943, onto the lapel. I took one last look around the room. Everything was perfect. 7:45. Still early. I made a second cup of tea and waited by the window. The road outside was empty, save for a squirrel darting across the sidewalk. Birds chirped cheerfully in the trees. A breeze shifted the curtains. 8 o'clock came and went. I didn't panic. They were probably running late. Weddings are chaos. I knew that. At 8:10 I checked my phone. No messages. No calls. 8:20 still nothing. I called Ellie. It rang. Then voicemail. "Hi sweetheart, it's Grandma. Just wanted to say I'm dressed and ready. Just waiting for the car. Love you. See you soon." I set the phone down, smiled at the photo of us on the mantel. Her in a polka dot dress, me in the garden. She looked so happy. 8:45, 9 o'clock. I called again. Voicemail again. "Maybe they're just busy," I whispered aloud, trying to fill the room with something other than silence. By 9:30 I stopped pretending. My chest felt tight. Not painful, just heavy. I walked to the front porch slowly, held onto the railing as I looked down the road. A breeze picked up the hem of my skirt. The sun was higher now, warm against my face. No car. No driver. No one. I went back inside and sat down in the armchair by the fireplace. I could still smell the perfume on my wrist. Faint like memory. I checked my phone one last time. Still nothing. I placed it gently on the table, folded my hands over my lap and stared at the wall, at the photo, at the suit I wore, at everything I had prepared for this day. I didn't cry. Not yet. But the tea had gone cold. At exactly 10:17 a.m. My phone buzzed on the side table. I reached for it quickly, too quickly. The movement made my knee ache, but I ignored it. Finally, I thought. There must have been some delay. A flat tire. Or maybe the driver couldn't find the address. These things happen. I smiled to myself. I even smoothed the front of my jacket with one hand. Text from my son. I opened it. Hey Mom. Don't worry about the car. We figured it might be too much today. Just enjoy the live stream, okay? Love you. I blinked. Read it again. Then again. Don't worry about the car. Too much today. Enjoy the live stream. I felt the weight of the phone in my hand suddenly cold. Like I was holding a stone instead of a message from my child. I dialed him immediately. He picked up after 3 rings. Hi Mom. What does this mean? What? The message. You're not sending the car? Oh yeah. About that. We figured it might be easier this way. Easier for who? He hesitated. I could hear background noise, chatter, laughter, clinking glass. Mom, it's not personal. Isn't it? Come on, it's just, you've been so tired lately. You've said it yourself. And I still got up at 4 this morning. I dressed. I did my hair. We know. We love that. But it's a long day, lots of stairs, lots of people. I wanted to be there. I cut in. My voice cracked slightly. I was ready to be there. He sighed, and this time it sounded irritated. Ellie was worried. She didn't want you to feel overwhelmed. Or, be uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. There's loud music, drinking. Younger guests. It's gonna be a party atmosphere. She didn't think it would be your thing. I didn't ask for a rave. I asked for a seat. Silence. Then he said gently, like that made it better. She just wants everything to go smoothly, okay? She's nervous. It's a big day. She didn't want to worry about anyone. Getting upset or needing attention. Needing attention? I repeated. My throat tightened. You know what I mean. No, I really don't. Look, it's not a big deal. You'll still be a part of it. The live stream is high quality. We even have a chat, you can send messages and we'll read them. A pause. I couldn't answer. Not yet. Because I was trying to stay polite. To stay small. To stay the good, quiet version of myself that didn't make things harder for anyone. I looked down at my shoes. White, low-heeled. I had polished them the night before. So that's it then? I said quietly. Mom. You're telling me I can't come to my granddaughter's wedding? No one's banning you. We just decided this would be best. Best for who? He didn't answer. Instead, I heard someone call his name in the background. Laughter. A champagne cork popping. I've gotta go, he said. Livestream starts soon. Love you, Mom. And then he was gone. I lowered the phone and stared at it. On the table beside me was the speech I'd written, still folded. I had practiced it 3 times last night. In front of the mirror, carefully adjusting each line so it wouldn't be too long, or too boring. I'd even added a little joke. Marriage, I'd written, is a lot like making tea. You get better at it the longer you wait. Now the joke felt like a lie. I stood and walked slowly to the window. Outside, the street was still empty. The air shimmered with late morning heat. No car. No driver. No family. Only the breeze rustling the trees and the distant hum of traffic. When I returned to the living room, I sat back down and opened my laptop. A new notification blinked across the screen. Ellie and Ryan's wedding livestream. Starting soon. I clicked the link. Soft piano music played. On screen, the ceremony was already in motion. Guests in pastel dresses and tailored suits smiled, kissed cheeks, snapped selfies. Rows of white chairs were perfectly aligned. Petals lined the aisle. I scanned the crowd. I knew many of them. Neighbors, cousins, old family friends. None of them looked confused. No one was looking toward the entrance. No one was waiting for one more person to arrive. They all looked perfectly content. As if I were never meant to be there. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I pressed the mute button. Closed the laptop. and sat. I sat in the suit I had ironed at 4 a.m., in the shoes I had shined with trembling hands, in the makeup I had carefully chosen to match my mother's brooch. I sat there for a long time, not moving, not feeling, just remembering every birthday party, every school play, every scraped knee I kissed, every secret I kept, every single time I said yes when I should have said no, just to be kind, just to feel needed. And in that quiet something changed. A flicker of heat, of anger. Something inside me, something slow and steady and sharp began to wake up. The house still smelled like lilacs and pills, that sharp, cloying spray I used on the curtains thinking it would make the house feel lighter, joyful. But now it mixed with the stale air of disappointment, like a perfume worn too long. Nothing in the room moved, except the second hand of the clock and my own breathing. I sat in silence, but my mind was loud with voices from just a few weeks ago. Grandma. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't really important. That was Ellie, her voice bright but tight, like someone trying to sound cheerful while holding back panic. I'd never heard her talk like that before. I remember she came over late that evening after work, her hair in a messy bun and a planner under her arm. She'd barely taken off her coat before she started in. The venue raised their fee last minute. The cake's fine, the dress is handled, but the food, it's more than we budgeted. I had smiled, already knowing where it was going. I offered her tea, chamomile with honey, just like always. She took a sip, hesitated, and then said it. Do you think you might be able to help us with the catering? Just the food part. We'll handle the rest, I promise. I didn't even ask how much. I just said, of course, sweetheart. But she insisted on showing me the numbers. It's only because we want everyone to feel taken care of. You know? I want it to be special. And you've always made things feel special. She reached into her planner and pulled out a brochure. 3-course meals, hors d'oeuvres on silver trays, signature cocktails with tiny lavender flowers floating on top. The total made my heart skip just for a second. $30,000. Just for the catering. I know it's a lot, she said quickly. But it'll cover everything, appetizers, dinner, drinks, even the late-night snacks. We'll make sure they know it's your gift. And that part got me. Your gift. I imagined the moment. Ellie standing up, smiling. This whole meal, all of it, it's from my grandmother. I saw the faces turn toward me. I felt the warm flush of pride that would come with that kind of gratitude. So I wrote the check. I remember how my hand shook a little as I signed it, and she placed her hand over mine, squeezing gently. You're the best, she whispered. And I believed her. Back then I believed every word. That this was a gesture of love. A way to be included. But now? Now I sat in an empty living room, dressed for a wedding I wasn't invited to attend. The laptop sat closed on the table. The live stream I imagined was in full swing. Guests laughing, clinking glasses, plates full of the food I paid for. And I wasn't even there to taste it. The sharp scent of lilacs caught in my throat, bitter now. I reached for the drawer and pulled out the catering receipt. I hadn't meant to keep it. But something told me not to throw it away. $30,000. Paid in full. Signed. With love. I folded it back up slower this time. They hadn't sent me a menu. They hadn't shown me the table settings. They hadn't even offered to put my name on the little place cards. And then today, no car. No call. Just a text saying it was too much. Too much for them to include me. But not too much for me to fund it. I remembered another detail now, small but sharp. Ellie had said when she took the check, I know we'll pay it back someday. I had laughed. It's a gift, darling. You don't pay back love. I was wrong. It wasn't love they took. It was usefulness. And once that ran out, once I paid the bill, I was no longer needed. I stood slowly and walked to the mantel. There, between the dusty candlesticks, was a framed photo of me and Ellie. Christmas 3 years ago. She's wearing a sweater I knit for her. We're both laughing. She's looking at me like I was her whole world. I touched the glass. I would have paid double, I whispered. And that was the truth. I would have paid anything to feel like part of the family. But now all I could feel was the thick, choking scent of lilac, and the sting of realizing I had bought a seat that didn't exist. The house was even quieter than the day before. No buzz from the live stream. No laughter from across the screen. Just the ticking clock and the thick scent of lilac hanging stubbornly in the air, like a perfume that didn't know it had overstayed its welcome. I hadn't changed out of my robe, the same one I wore every morning, soft cotton with frayed sleeves and a missing button near the collar. I hadn't washed my teacup either. It sat on the windowsill, rim stained faintly with chamomile and silence. My back ached. My knees reminded me it had been too long since I stretched. But still I didn't move. I sat in the armchair, staring at nothing in particular, listening to the house breathe. Then a knock. 2 short raps. Then silence. I closed my eyes. Of course. It was too soon for remorse, too late for rescue. Which left only one thing, the presence. I rose slowly, one hand steadying on the armrest. My slippers whispered against the carpet as I moved toward the door. The knock came again, softer this time, almost polite. I opened it. My son stood on the porch, his posture too casual. Samantha, Ellie's maid of honor, hovered behind him, clutching a phone and a tiny purse like a nervous bridesmaid still waiting for her cue. "Hi, Mom," he said. I waited. "We, just stopped by real quick." His smile was a little too rehearsed. Ellie asked if we could pick up the gift. "You know, from the wedding?" I tilted my head slightly. "The gift?" He nodded. Samantha added quickly, smiling like a flight attendant. "The envelope, if that's okay." "The envelope." I stepped aside without a word. "Come in." They followed me into the living room. I noticed how Samantha's eyes darted around the room, from the half-open drawer where the invitation still lay, to the cold teacup, to the mantel where Ellie's photo smiled too brightly. I walked ahead of them, slow but steady. My fingers trembled only slightly as I picked up the small velvet box from the coffee table. Deep blue. No ribbon. I turned and held it out. "It's here." My son took it, opening it gently, perhaps expecting something to gleam or rustle. Inside, a gold brooch in the shape of a lily. The pearl at its center had dulled slightly with age, but the design was elegant, old-world, timeless. He stared at it. Samantha leaned in. Her lips parted. She hesitated and then said it. "Oh, it's just a brooch?" I watched her carefully. Not angry. Just curious. My son looked up. "No envelope?" "No," I said. "That's the gift." He blinked. "Oh, right. Of course." He smiled again, thinner this time. "Sentimental value." "Yes," I said. "My mother wore it at her wedding. I wore it at mine." Samantha shifted her weight, clearly uncertain if she should look touched or disappointed. "Ellie just thought," she began softly, "maybe it would be something more traditional." I smiled. A small smile, tight and deliberate. She said she wanted something from the heart. Neither of them replied. My son closed the box and slid it into his coat pocket like something that might break if held too long. "Thanks," he said. "We'll let you rest." I nodded, but something inside me, something sharp and steady, rose to the surface. "How was the food?" I asked casually. He paused. "The food? The catering. Was it good?" Samantha's face lit up with the relief of having something positive to say. "Oh yes. People loved it. That little salmon thing with the green sauce. Everyone kept asking for the recipe. And the chocolate mousse? I mean, wow." I nodded as if I were a stranger reading a review online. "I'm glad," I said. He moved toward the door. Then he stopped. "Mom." I interrupted. "She won't understand the value anyway." He turned back. "What?" I looked at him, truly looked. The lines on his face that matched mine. The eyes that used to beam when he ran into my arms after school. "That's what she said, isn't it?" I asked softly. "When you open the box." "She won't understand the value anyway." He didn't deny it. Didn't nod. Didn't shake his head. Just stood there. Samantha pretended to check her phone. Her silence said enough. I stepped toward the door slowly. "You can tell her it's not just a brooch," I said. "It's a seed. Of something she's chosen not to grow." He hesitated. The moment hung there, full of unsaid things. Then he nodded once, barely. "Take care, Mom." The door closed behind them with a soft click. I stood there for a long time, staring at the knob, as if it might turn again. But it didn't. When I sat back down, I felt something shift. A stillness deep in my chest that wasn't sadness anymore. It was clarity. They had come for money. They left with history and didn't even know the difference. I wasn't going to look. That was the promise I made to myself. I would not check social media. I would not watch the live stream. I would not go searching for scraps of a celebration that I had been deliberately excluded from. But silence is louder than people think. It rings in your ears. It buzzes at the base of your skull. And it whispers. Maybe they posted something for you. Maybe they mentioned your name. Maybe it was all a misunderstanding. And so, after a night of no sleep, only the ticking of the clock and the sound of my own breath, I reached for my phone. I hesitated before unlocking the screen. Part of me hoped the battery had died overnight. It hadn't. I tapped the Instagram icon. Ellie's profile loaded almost immediately. She had changed her photo. It was no longer the soft picture of her and me from her birthday last year. Her leaning against my shoulder, cake crumbs on her lips, her eyes glowing. That had been replaced. Now it was a wedding photo. Ellie in a white gown, her cheek pressed against her husband's, a string of pearls at her throat. Her skin glowing, hair curled just right. The picture saturated in perfect pastels. A photograph crafted for likes. I stared at it. And then I scrolled down. The first post from the wedding was up. A carousel of images. It had already been up for 4 hours. Over 400 likes. Dozens of comments. Clicked it. First slide. Ellie walking down the aisle, her father holding her arm. Second, the kiss. Third, bridesmaids tossing flower petals in the air. Fourth, the first dance. Fifth, a photo that stopped my breath in my throat. Ellie hugging a woman. Not just hugging, clinging. Her arms wrapped tight. Her face buried in the woman's shoulder. Her eyes closed in what could only be described as joy. Intimacy. Love. The woman wore a navy blue dress and diamond studs. Her nails were painted pale pink. Her smile was gentle, composed, slightly smug. I had seen her once before. Sue, Ryan's mother. Ellie had barely spoken about her until this year. Now she was in the center of everything. And beneath the photo, the caption. Grateful beyond words for everyone who made this day possible. Especially this angel. My second mom, Sue's sparkling heart. My throat went dry. I stared at the words, reread them, and then stared again. Second mom. Especially. Sue. I scrolled through the rest of the images. Ellie with her new in-laws, with her bridesmaids, with college friends I had never met. There was no picture of me. No mention. Not even a tag. I checked the comments. My fingers stiff. Sue is the sweetest. You're so lucky to have her. You two really look like family. She raised you well. She raised you well. That one made my breath catch. As if someone had reached inside my ribs and pulled. Hard. I stared at the glowing screen. Heart thudding in a rhythm that didn't match the clock anymore. There were no thanks for the food. No post for the anonymous donor. Who paid for the entire dinner. No picture of the brooch. No, my real grandmother couldn't make it. But she was there in spirit. Nothing. It was as if I had never existed. I had been left out. I sat there, hunched slightly forward, the phone still glowing in my hand. Not crying. Not even blinking. Just frozen. I opened the comment box. Typed. You looked beautiful. I'm proud of you. My finger hovered over the send button. Then I deleted it. Not because I didn't mean it. But because I would not beg for a seat at a table I paid for. I locked the phone and set it down on the table. It slid slightly and tapped against the edge of the china cup I hadn't touched since yesterday. The sound was too loud in the quiet. I stood slowly and walked to the mirror in the hallway. My reflection looked back at me, tired, yes, but not weak. There were stories in the lines around my mouth. Strength in the silver in my hair. My eyes, though heavy, were steady. I had raised Ellie. Held her when she had croup and couldn't breathe. Rocked her through night terrors. Stayed up until dawn stitching her Halloween costumes by hand. Fed her, taught her, forgave her when she lied. Loved her when she pushed me away. And this woman in navy chiffon, who had done none of that, was now Mom. I turned away from the mirror. Walked to the small cabinet by the entryway. Pulled out the folder I hadn't opened in over 2 years. My will. I laid it on the kitchen table and unfolded the pages. There it was, in black and white. Beneficiary, Eleanor Grace Matthews. Everything. The house. The savings. The ring I wore on my wedding day, the family photo albums, the mahogany jewelry box, the patchwork quilt my grandmother made during the war. All hers. All meant to say, I love you. You matter. I looked at the words, and for the first time they looked wrong, because I had loved her with everything I had, and she had thanked another woman for my life's work. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't cry. I just sat in the quiet listening, to the ticking of the wall clock, to the creaking of the floorboards, to my own breath. The room was heavy, as if it knew. I sat there in my wedding blue suit, the one I'd ironed at 4 in the morning. It still smelled faintly of perfume. L'air du temps. The one Ellie used to say reminded her of warm hugs and old movies. That Ellie was gone now. I needed to move. My legs were stiff. My heart, heavier. I made my way to the hallway where the tall cabinet stood, the one with the brass knob that never quite shut. Inside were old papers, recipe cards, notes, forgotten things I hadn't had the courage to throw away. And then I saw it. A pale envelope tucked between 2 holiday cards. My name on the front, in a familiar slanted hand. Margaret. Open only if it's very bad. It was Walter's handwriting. My husband. Gone 9 years now. But his voice came back instantly. I sat down right there on the carpet, soft and old, the same one Ellie used to run across barefoot. I opened the envelope carefully. The paper inside was thin and slightly yellowed. His letter was short and sharp. Margaret, if you're reading this, you're alone. And if you're alone, someone must have hurt you. I'm sorry I'm not there. But I know you. You'd never open this unless it was serious. So let me be clear. You give more than anyone I know. And people, even the ones we love, get used to kindness. They treat it like furniture. I've seen how they look past you. I've seen how Ellie takes and forgets to give. I know you want to believe the best in her. But she's learning to replace you. One day she might forget entirely what you've given. If that day comes, I need you to remember this. You are not too sensitive. You are not dramatic. You are not imagining things. You are the reason this family exists. You are the roof and the floor. The first brick. Don't let them erase you. Don't scream. Don't beg. Just stand. Even if your knees hurt. Even if your hands shake. Stand. And let them feel the weight of what they chose to forget. I love you. I see you. I'm with you. Always. W. I folded the letter carefully and pressed it to my chest. And for the first time in days, I felt something stronger than sadness. I felt seen. Walter had written this not from bitterness, but from foresight. Like he knew the silence would come. That someday I would be erased from a room I helped build. I stood slowly and walked to the mirror in the hallway. I looked at myself, really looked. My face was older. My eyes tired. But behind them, something had returned. Not rage. Not vengeance. But resolve. I remembered holding Ellie's hand through every fever. Singing her lullabies while her parents fought downstairs. Teaching her how to say when the world was too loud. And now I was too much. Too old. Too quiet. Too out of place. No. I was not invisible. They had simply closed their eyes. But Walter was right. I am not the past. I am the beginning. I didn't know what I would do yet. But I knew this. I would not sit by the window, dressed in blue, waiting for kindness to come knocking. I would stand. And they would remember. Even if it's the last thing they ever do. Morning came, but it brought no light. The sky outside was gray, flat, and heavy. The kind of sky that forgets how to shine. But the silence in the house had changed. Not softer, sharper. Like something had cracked open during the night. I moved slower than usual. Every step measured. Every breath quiet but deliberate. I didn't know what I was looking for yet. But I knew where I had to begin. The hallway closet. It was taller than me, wide and old, with a keyhole that hadn't locked in decades. Inside, behind winter coats and faded umbrellas, was the drawer. The one I hadn't opened since Walter died. It groaned as I pulled it open. The air inside smelled like paper and time. Receipts. Birth certificates. Old passports. Letters from the bank. Folders labeled in my handwriting. A faded red notebook from when Ellie was still a baby. Feeding schedules. Doctor's appointments, little doodles of hearts. And then I found it. A thin cream-colored folder. My name on the front. Neat. Underlined. Will final. I carried it to the kitchen table. Laid it out flat. Smoothed the edges with my palm. My heart didn't race. It just slowed, like it wanted to hear every word before I turned the page. I opened it, and there she was. Eleanor Grace Matthews. Line after line. Page after page. To my granddaughter Eleanor, I leave the house located at. To Eleanor, I bequeath the following accounts in full. My wedding ring, a diamond solitaire, to be passed to Eleanor. All remaining jewelry, silverware, antiques, and heirlooms, in trust for Eleanor, to be released upon her 30th birthday. Every sentence was a memory of me believing in her, trusting her, handing over everything I had built with my hands, my tears, my years. And now, she couldn't even mention me in a post. I turned the pages slowly, reading each one. It felt like watching someone walk out of your life in slow motion. Not slamming the door, but closing it gently after taking everything. I remembered writing it. The lawyer's office. How warm Ellie's hand had felt in mine when I told her someday this would all be hers. Her eyes wide. Grateful. She said, "I won't forget." She had. She forgot my name. My voice. My seat at the table. She replaced me with chiffon and hashtags. And I paid for the wine. My hand rested on the last page. I didn't tear it. I didn't crumple it. I simply stared. A strange calm filled my chest. Not peace, not yet. But control. Quiet, undeniable control. I could feel Walter behind me. Not literally, but close. His voice wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. You don't have to disappear to be kind. The words echoed. I looked at Ellie's name again. Bold. Centered. She hadn't just erased me from a photo. She had erased me from her story. And I had offered her my final chapter. I closed the folder gently. Not yet. I wasn't ready to change it, not today. Today I just needed to remember who I was. I was not a guest in my own legacy. Let them believe I was fading. Let them think I was done. They would learn soon enough. A quiet woman is not a powerless one. The morning sun was harsh. Not warm, sharp white. It fell across the kitchen table in stripes, illuminating the cream-colored folder like a spotlight on a crime. I had left the will out all night. Closed, untouched, but not forgotten. I sat down in front of it with a cup of tea I wouldn't drink. And then I reached for the phone. I hadn't made a call like this in years. Not since Walter passed. Not since we sat together in that little office with beige walls and leather chairs that squeaked when you moved. He had chosen the lawyer. Said he liked how the man listened without interrupting. That lawyer still worked there. At least I hoped he did. I dialed slowly, carefully. Each number rang like a bell in my chest. 3 tones. Then a voice, too cheerful, too bright. "Good morning, McHenry and Vale. How may I assist you today?" "Hello. My name is Margaret Lowry. I'd like to speak with someone about revising a will." "Certainly, Ms. Lowry. Let me pull up your file. One moment, please." Classical hold music filled the silence. Vivaldi, I think. Too quick, too eager. Then a click. "Ms. Lowry. This is Thomas Vale. It's good to hear from you again." "Mr. Vale. Yes. It's been quite a while. Too long. I hope you've been well." "I've been quiet. That's not quite the same." He let out a soft chuckle. "Fair enough. What can I do for you?" "I want to change the will." That quieted him. "I see. Would you like to discuss the updates now, or schedule a consultation in person?" "Now, if that's all right." "Of course. Do you have the original document?" "Yes. It's in front of me." "Good. Just to confirm, you're referring to the will signed on March 18, 2021? "Correct. And you're looking to amend or revoke?" "Revoke." There was a pause. Not long but deliberate. "Very well. May I ask, are you sure, Ms. Lowry? Once we begin the process, the prior version becomes void." "I'm aware." "And the reason for the change?" I inhaled slowly. "Because people change. And because I finally saw it clearly." Another pause. "Understood. Will I need a witness?" "Yes. 2 for the final signing. But we can prepare the draft and mail it to you with instructions." "Fine. And the new beneficiaries?" I tapped my finger on the folder. Not the ones listed here. All right. Then who would you like to name in their place? I didn't rush. Those who remember me. Pardon. Not the loudest. Not the youngest. Not the ones who write nice captions and forget the soul behind the smile. Do you have specific names? 1. A girl named Lily. 12 years old. She brings me muffins every Sunday. Doesn't ask for anything. Doesn't forget my birthday. Noted. And the library. They still call me Mrs. Lowry when I visit. That matters. The public library? Yes. And the historical society. I found a letter from my husband last night. He used to volunteer there. Understood. We can designate fixed amounts or percentages as you prefer. No percentages. That's for people who want to seem generous without giving much. I want names, deeds, memory. Very well. He typed something. I could hear the soft tap of keys. And what about your granddaughter? Should I leave her in as secondary beneficiary? No. Understood. He didn't ask why. That's why Walter liked him. I stood up slowly, walking to the window as I held the phone to my ear. Outside, the mailbox creaked in the wind. The sidewalk was empty. The tree Ellie used to climb was losing leaves already, though it was only August. I can have a draft ready by Friday, he said. That's fine. Would you like a digital copy emailed? Or shall we mail a hard copy? Both. And a reminder. You'll need 2 unrelated witnesses to sign. I'll find them. I'm not as invisible as they think. He didn't reply to that. Just typed. Calm. Professional. Anything else you'd like to include? I looked at the will again. At the name printed over and over, bold and unearned. Yes, I said softly. Include a note at the end. A personal message? Just 1 line. Of course. What would you like it to say? I smiled for the first time in days. Not bitter. Not sad. Just quiet. This house was built on memory. And memory will decide who lives here next. The envelope lay on the table like a silent truth. I'd held off opening it until morning, but now, morning or evening, it didn't matter. The day was mine to reclaim. I poured coffee I never intended to drink and sat at the table. The paper was thick, cold to the touch. It was the final draft of my will, the one I had revised. I uncapped Walter's old red fountain pen. Weight felt right. Honest. I placed the pages before me. Item 1, the house. I bequeath my home at 24 Maple Street to the town of Brook Hill Library Foundation, to be converted into a literary and memory preservation center. The words felt like a hammer. My home, it held laughter, stories, her footprints. Now it would hold more than just me. Thomas Vale cleared his throat. You're certain about no family involvement? I forced a tight smile. I never forgot. Then. I don't need to remember now. He nodded, respect easing into his tone. Item 2, the ring. My diamond engagement ring, worn since 1956, to go to my niece, Hannah Wood of Burlington, Vermont. I looked at the sentence. The diamond was modest. It held decades of whispered love. And I would pass it to someone who never forgot to say thank you. Thomas paused. That's a meaningful choice. I lifted a trembling hand to the ring finger of my left hand. No ring there. It's been with me. I'd rather Hannah hold it. Not memories, but something real. Item 3, financial assets. All remaining monetary assets from account number 4812 are to be donated to the Golden Plates Foundation for homebound seniors. Seniors who once were me. Who sit, waiting for someone to knock. Thomas glanced up. You're sure? Tears filled my eyes despite myself. I know what it's like to wait for nothing. He swallowed. Of course. My gaze fell to the bottom of the page. Signed this 22nd day of August by Margaret Lowry. The pen hovered over the ink line. The sun shifted. The table bubbled golden. My breath caught. I lifted the red pen, pressed its tip to the page. Thomas watched quietly. The ink flowed slowly. I signed Margaret. My hand shook. Not from weakness, but from the weight of inheritance. Middle initial? He prompted softly. I traced the E. Then the surname. Lowry. The dots on the I bled. After a long moment, I placed the pen down. I closed my eyes. Thomas broke the silence. Would you like me to mail this, or deliver it personally? I nodded quietly, tears finally spilling. But first. My voice cracked. Thomas leaned in. I'd like a line at the end. If you want. I swallowed. Yes. I signed again beneath my name. This house was built on memory. Memory should decide who lives here next. Thomas exhaled softly. Powerful words. I nodded, wiping tears. I stood slowly, pain and pride mingled in the ache of my legs. The folder snapped closed. The red ink stained the edge of the paper like truth. I walked to the window. Outside, the maple tree still bore green leaves. One fell, drifting onto the sidewalk. I thought of Ellie, her laughter, her promises. But I thought more of myself. I had stood. I had named. I had reclaimed my story. The house, the ring, the legacy, they would live. Not because of her. Because of me. And that dignity would be my final victory. I was sitting by the window, holding my mother's brooch in my palm, its gold warm against chilled skin. The late afternoon light dipped through the curtains, reading the fine lines of age on my hands. My tea, once fragrant, had turned tepid and stale hours ago. Time felt suspended. My phone buzzed with a message from Ellie. Are you angry? Why are you ignoring me? Anger? No. I was beyond that. But I wasn't going to respond. Moments later, the email notification appeared. The one from her lawyer. Subject: urgent. Inheritance terms amendment. I felt no anxiety. Only a quiet certainty. She would read what I'd written. Everything I had given, it was final now. A soft knock came to the door. Delicate, almost frightened. I stood slowly and folded my hands over the brooch. Its intricacy still felt like memory under my skin. I opened the door. There she was, Ellie. In a simple white dress. Hair strained into a bun. Expression tight. Pain, confusion. A desperate hunger for clarity. She exhaled, the breath tremoring as she began. Ellie, exhaling, said, "Why did you leave money to the Seniors Foundation? Why not to me?" Her voice broke. The question hung between us, brittle and sharp. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I silenced my racing heart with a steadying breath and surveyed her face. Those eyes that once looked at me with wonder now held fear and hurt. Then I held out the folder on the table. The weight of paper had an undeniable truth. Me, softly but with firm clarity. They understand, Ellie. They will understand when you too are forgotten by your family. But they have never experienced being erased. You're still young. You have a life ahead. You can earn, remember, rebuild. You'll understand me one day. Her fingers tightened around the folder, knuckles turning white. I saw the edge of realization in her eyes, but also the sting of abandonment. Ellie, clutching the doorframe, whispered, "Why? Why would you do this?" I stepped closer, slow, deliberate. Me. Because I was quietly deleted before I could understand it myself. I stopped being relevant in your life, erased except for shadows. Now I choose my own terms. She backed away, tears welling, trembling in frustration and grief. Ellie, a tremulous voice. You ruined everything, my memories of you." I gently touched her arm. Me, quietly. Dignity isn't something children inherit. They watch us hold it. I held my ground. She closed her eyes and sobs came, silent, shaking her frame. I didn't speak. My presence was answer enough. Then Ellie turned and left. The door closed behind her with a muted click. I returned to my chair and glanced at the brooch resting in my lap. Its pearl glowed faintly. I raised the teacup to my lips and breathed in the scent of mint and age. I whispered into the stillness. They said I was too old for the celebration. I decided. They're too young for the inheritance. A single tear slid down my cheek, but it wasn't despair. It was relief. Quiet, indomitable. I looked out the window. Leaves drifted down from the old maple outside. Life continued beyond this moment. I placed the brooch gently on the table, no longer a relic but a testament. And finally I felt at home in my own story.